We are the Liberty Intelligence Organization Network.
Camera myself. And this is our news recap show, and I'm your host, the Captain. If you've been following us, this is our special report, and I talked about the potential of possible World War III, and mentioned in the last segment that I did have some bombshell information. Again, this isn't bombshell information. For those of you who are awake, if you're tuning in to me, I appreciate it, and I thank you for tuning in to me. But again, this is for the zombies, folks. If you're awake and you tune in to me, link this to someone you know who is a zombie. Get them to watch this. If you're awake, watch Alex Jones. If you're awake, listen to InfoWars. Look at InfoWars. They're up to date. I'm a recap. That's what we're doing here on this recap show. We're a news recap. We're going over old information that awake people already know about, but most unawake people, most zombies, have no idea are real. So when I say bombshell, you might already be aware of this. Most of the awake people, I'm already aware of this, but 9/11 was an inside job, as they like to say. It was a New World Order propagated event to start the war on terror. It was the big initiation to the police state, to the global takeover. But, people like to deny it. There's those that always continue to deny it. Well, why I say this is bombshell news. This is bombshell news, not only one, because I got a link to the actual government documents that have been declassified from the CIA's archive. You can, this is their own words, right out of their own mouth. The snake has told what it will do. And that's one of the rules that, and again, I'm not sure when it was declassified. It might have not been declassified until recently. But it was declassified, and George Washington University did a study on it. They're the guys who actually linked to their website because they're the ones who posted it online. They're the guys who got the documents, scanned them, and put them on the internet for all of us to see. And again, if you are still living in the 1960s and the internet doesn't exist, please, and if you're still living in the 1990s and you don't believe that brain microchips exist and that they can remotely control airplanes, and that they have these things called drones. If you don't believe that stuff, get with the times, folks. It's the 21st century. It's Buck Rogers' time. It's Star Wars times. We're entering the future. Technology is advancing exponentially. That being said, as I mentioned, this is bombshell. First of all, I'm just going to give you guys a name. Operation Northwoods. Type it into a CIA search engine called Google. Search it up. Look at it for yourself. It's called Operation Northwoods. And basically what it was 9/11 on paper, written in the 1960s. It talked about terrorism. In the 1960s, the Cold War, Cuba was becoming communist at the time. They didn't like that. Castro communism, bad. We got to stop it. So they wanted to go in militarily. How can and the United States people were against that. The people were like, we don't want any more wars. We're tired of wars. Let's stop the wars. Stop killing our troops. And this was back when people were awake. A lot of people in the 60s were awake. A lot of people were zombies. But a lot of people were awake as well. And Operation Northwoods was a CIA plan to use terrorism as a reason to get the United States military involved in Cuba. Now, the plan for Operation Northwoods was a number of things. First, it would involve bombing United States ships with explosive devices, and then blaming those attacks. They would purposely blow up their own ships, and then blame the attacks in the media on Cuban terrorists. In addition, it's amazing to know that they wrote this in the 1960s and to have seen it happen, except not about Cuba. They did it with the Middle East, because the Cold War had ended. But this was Kennedy was the guy that said no to this. Kennedy said no because Kennedy was a good man, and they killed him for it. But it's all there. It's all there in paper. They talk about it, and they literally say our plan is to get a group of kids on an airplane, fly the airplane to a secret CIA airport, take off with a drone airplane that's not controlled, fly it into a building, say that Cuban terrorists took over the plane and flew it into the building and killed all the college kids to create outrage in the United States to allow them to declare war on Cuba. For those of you who don't know, on September 11th, a number of airplanes crashed into buildings. It was used as an excuse to declare war on a number of Middle Eastern countries, namely Afghanistan and Iraq, and continues to be used as a war on terror against other places like Libya, Egypt, and Syria in more modern times. And the war in Afghanistan is still going on, and now they're even talking about sending troops back to Iraq, more troops back to Iraq. Yes, I actually saw that in a news piece just a few days ago. They're talking about sending troops back into Iraq after they said we're pulling out. We're never pulling out, folks. This is a global domination, and the United States is the military branch. So again, Operation Northwoods, bombshell, folks. This is 9/11 planned out on paper. All you have to do is switch out Cubans for radical Islamists. That's the only thing that changed. The same plan. They really did it. It's pulled through. And remember, they blew up. They had a bombing of that ship that was over in Europe. Blamed that on radical Islamists. That fits in exactly with Operation Northwoods. Then they have the airplane thing, exactly with the way they planned it in Operation Northwoods. It doesn't get any more bombshell than this. This is the smoking gun. This is the smoking gun, folks. This proves that it is a secret organization that is trying to conquer the world, and 9/11 was their big pow, their big boom, we're taking over. And it was planned 40 years prior in the 1960s. Except it wasn't planned for them. For now, it was planned for them, except the president at the time said no. Or really, the New World Order guys said no eventually, but now 2001 came along and they said, remember that old Operation Northwoods plan? Oh yeah, I remember that plan. We talked about flying airplanes into buildings and blaming it on Cubans. Well, what if we did it, except instead of Cubans, we blamed it on Muslims? That would allow us to get into the Middle East. My George, you're a genius, and most people have forgotten about Operation Northwoods. We can declassify it, and most of the people have been totally dominated by our mental manipulation. They won't even believe it when they see it. It's the perfect plan! That's how New World Order people think. That's how they probably talk, and they're wicked, evil people, and they think you're stupid and helpless. Show them you're not. Regain your humanity. Do away with the zombie disease. Thanks for tuning in. As I mentioned, this is our special report number 2, and that was our, Operation Northwoods. Look it up. Look into it. Thanks for tuning in. Stay strong. Stay safe. Stay free. Stay informed.